I don't know, is it me? Does it look like an IV? This looks crazy, doesn't it?
Hey, I'm Sommelier André Hueston Mack, and today I'm going to give you a behind-the-scenes look at all of my wine tools. From the most common things that we might all use to the things only the pros use. You don't need a lot of tools at all to enjoy wine, but there's more specific tools that you need when you work with wine on an everyday basis. So today I've broken it down into 4 simple categories: opening, preparing, tasting, and preserving. So there's many different ways to open a bottle of sparkling, but what we might have seen lately is sabering. I like to show up to people's homes with this little case here. It has all the things I need to get the party started. So the act of sabering is using a sword to lop the head off of the champagne bottle. This here is a makeshift sabering tool. Kind of blunt, but very reminiscent of a knife or a sword. It traditionally goes back to the time of Napoleon. Riding horseback, pulling out the swords and sabering champagne was a celebration based on victory. It's cool, it's fun. You want to hit it underneath this lip. So if you look closely at this bottle, the cage is attached underneath the second lip. This is the first lip, this is the second lip. You want to hold the bottle at an angle away from anybody or people, and you want to slide your saber along the edge of the bottle and hit the second lip. And as you hit underneath the second lip, the cork and the bottle will fly off into the air. It's a clean break, so the glass will break, the cork will still be in it, you'll let it fly off. Due to the pressure of the wine that's in the bottle, it will kind of blow any glass or shards of glass that might fall back into the bottle out of the bottle. Champagne will shoot out, and thus the party has begun. You want to make sure that it's really cold. By it being cold, it helps the pressure shoot out. And I think the biggest part of all of it is just the safety of it. Sometimes you've seen stuff where the whole bottle explodes, right? So maybe you want to wear a glove. Like, there's lots of different things, but like safety is the key. Make sure that the biggest thing is that the bottle's not pointing anywhere towards any other people. I mean, this can really take somebody out, and be careful and know that the bottle can explode in your hand. So there's some risk to it. Maybe that's why people do it. Maybe that's there's some fun to it there. There's some risk involved. And ultimately, there is a little bit of mess, but like, that's the fun part about it. I'm not gonna open it in this bar, so we're gonna take it outside to demonstrate. I'm gonna remove the cage. This is where you wanna be careful. We have our saber here. We just kind of wanna run on that. There we go, told you. Didn't he? You should be careful doing this. This is why it should be cold. There's safety rules for a reason. This wasn't cold enough, thus the bottle somewhat exploded a little bit. Always, always, always make sure your sparkling wine is super cold. Not freezing, but cold. So if you have a sword or a saber, there's another way to open a bottle, and that's with a corkscrew, i.e. a wine key. Not only is it my preferred method, I think it's the world's preferred method of opening a bottle of wine. This is called a foil cutter. You want to cut on the second lip, so no wine actually comes in contact with the foil. Traditionally, these foils contain lead, and you didn't want to have any lead in your wine. Since the rules have changed, out of tradition, we still cut on the second lip. So you make 2 cuts, that's 1, go underneath, that's 2, and then we're gonna make what we call the C-section up the side, and then we twist and turn off. We're gonna open the lever, pull out your helix. I always like to go off-centered, and then press in, and then turn. We just want to turn. You want to turn the corkscrew, not the bottle. And traditionally where that comes from is you're presenting this bottle of wine to a guest, you still want them to be able to see the label. And then the first lever is the highest lever, and you just want to press. So now this is caught on the first lip, and then you just pull up, and then you go back down to the second lever, as you guys can see here, and then press, and then it's really almost out now, and then you just take your key and just turn and twist, and done. So this is a pretty special wine opener. This is called a Durand, named after the person who invented it. And as you start to open more and more bottles that have vintage, meaning older bottles of wine, this is a must-have. And this is kind of cool because this is a marriage of 2 basic wine openers. This is a helix. This goes inside the cork, helps you get a grip on the cork to be able to pull it out. But generally what happens to an old cork, as it starts to decay, it gets stuck to the side of the bottles, they become brittle, and they start to break. They combine something as simple as the helix with this, a butler's corkscrew, or an alceau. When you look at it, it's just 2 thin blades of steel that you insert in between the cork and the glass, and you kind of wedge down like this. And then as you get all the way down, you twist and turn and you pull out. The idea of putting them together was pretty brilliant when you think about it. You go in and just twist. You have that in. And now you want to insert the Durand. Always use the long side first. So you just want to insert on one side of the the cork, and on the other side you want to insert the other. So now we have it here, and now you want to kind of do this rocky motion as you slide the blades on either side. Now we want to take and turn and pull. And so we've extracted the cork in its entirety. And this is really helpful, especially as you start to get into like older bottles of wine. You know, the cork can be cumbersome in a way, especially using the traditional opener, but this device is pretty brilliant and one of my favorite things to use. So this is actually a cork removal tool. If a piece of cork breaks off and falls into a bottle and you want to be able to remove it, you slide this into the bottle. As you get close to the cork and it's in your grasp, you slide down this and that closes onto the cork, and then you pull it out. So opening this vintage bottle of California Cabernet, oh my God, the cork broke off in it, and I want to be able to remove the cork. In a professional setting, when you want to be able to present this bottle of wine to someone, you don't want to present it with cork in it. So I push down, and now I see that it's inside of the arms. I can see it as I start to pull it up, and then I start to pull slowly, pressing down this little lever here as we have the cork in our grasp, and we pull. Voila. That was actually pretty easy. A lot of times it's a lot more complicated than that, and these are all bent out of shape, but it's a tool, and it got the job done. These things run under 10 bucks, and for a bottle of this price point, like over $200, you really don't want to be caught without having one of these kind of tools just to make your presentation right. So we have a vintage bottle of wine. So as a wine starts to age, the color and the pigment start to fall out of the wine, and it accumulates on the bottle, and it's what we like to call sediment. And so you'll have sediment at the bottom of the bottle, and you want to remove that sediment from said wine so you can have a more pleasant drinking experience. So the first thing we have is a decanter. So you just want to have a clean vessel that you can use to be able to pour the wine in. And so we have this very beautiful decanter here, but it can be any container. It can be a pitcher that you could use or anything like that. This is called a Bordeaux shaped bottle. These are called the shoulders. And as you start to decant wine and you do it slowly, all the sediment is trapped in the shoulder of the bottle here. And so that's an aid for when you start to decant. We decant wines for several different reasons. You know, we decant young wines to aerate them, right? So to soften them up so they're more palatable. We decant white wines to bring them to temperature. If a white wine is too cold, you want to decant that wine to kind of bring it down to temperature in a very quick way. We decant old wines to remove the wines from the sediment. And what we like to talk about also in the industry is double decanting. What you could do is pour the wine into a new vessel, take this bottle, dump out all the sediment, give it a light rinse, kind of dry it, and then pour the wine back into it. And that's called double decanting. And this is kind of an old meets new. This is called a cellar rat. Very simple metal device, and generally speaking, there's a candle that actually sits inside of here. We took something old, a cellar rat, and actually adapted it by using a flashlight. And we do a little twist. This starts to illuminate the shoulder. Thus, as we start to pour, we can see the sediment start to move from the bottom to the shoulder, and then it will give us more leverage or knowledge of like when to stop pouring. This is a way to be able to catch some of the stuff that you miss. So large particles or anything that kind of pours through will be caught here. We have the light illuminated neck. Start to see some sediment here, so I'm gonna slow down my pouring slowly. And now I can start to see a lot of the sediment trapped on the neck, and then we're done. One way to be able to see what was left over is we can use this little sieve here and just pour, and then you get a better sense of like what is actually left in the bottle. So all that's the stuff at the bottom and doesn't really make for a really great drinking experience. So you just want to remove that from the wine. Yeah, it seems like a lot of work and a lot of tools and complicated, but it's pretty simple. And the end goal is really just to be able to enjoy the wine. And when you're into it, this part is all fun. And sometimes life throws you a curveball and you have a really big bottle of wine that you need to serve. So this is a 5 liter here. This has some bottle age to it, so this is from 2004. And what's interesting about wines that are bottled in large format is that they take a lot longer to age. And so large bottles come at a premium because they last longer. It takes a longer time for these particular bottles to mature, so they are coveted. So something like this you would want to leave sitting up for a few days. As you leave this wine sitting up for a few days, all the sediment falls to the bottom of the bottle. The wine needs to be removed from the sediment. But the idea of being able to try to decant this wine, because of its size, is pretty awkward. You'd have to start and then stop. And the golden rule when you're decanting wine is once you start, you can't stop. So this we would attack a little bit differently by using a siphon. We're gonna insert this into the bottle of wine, We take the one end of the siphon and put it in the decanter. This has a little pump action on it, and so we're just gonna pump the wine. And as we start to pump the wine, we start to flow, pump a little bit, and now here we go, into the decanter. So notice that the siphon is not at the bottom of the decanter, so it's not sucking out any of the sediment. And now we have just a steady flow of wine entering the decanter. I know this is complicated. This is so pretentious and over the top, but this is a lot of the work that kind of goes in behind the scenes. I don't expect anybody to do this at their home. Then as the decanter starts to full, we'll pull the siphon out. It will stop the suction and it clears the hose. Oh my God, if that would have failed, that would have been great for video. All right, so now we're moving into the tasting portion. This tool is called a taste fan. And so generally the sommelier would wear it around his neck, kind of like a chain. And this would be his little tasting cup. Traditionally, when you go to wines that have a sommelier, each wine is presented to you, the person ordering it, and then taste it by the sommelier to make sure that the wine is sound and is correct and tasting the way that it should be. And once that happened, the taste is actually poured for the guests. I used to use mine as an ashtray when I smoked, but this thing was actually a part of the uniform. You know, you had your bottle of wine, I presented it to the guests, they say yes, and I would pull my little cup around my neck. And there's still some restaurants to this day in New York City that do it. They do it beautifully. So they're not extinct. There's only very few restaurants that use these things. And then you pour a little taste inside the cup. And then you would smell. You would taste and evaluate. And then you would move on. Traditionally now what you would see is the practice of a sommelier tasting the wine. That's still something that's prevalent, but they're tasting through a glass. A really big part about tasting wine is how to taste like a professional. We don't consume wine, we don't swallow it when we're on the floor. We have a little spittoon that we use that we spit the wine into. This is a really important part and what makes you professional, being able to taste, evaluate a wine, spit in it without becoming drunk. And so it's pretty discreet. You know, you're not spitting for distance or anything like that. You don't need to make any noise. Generally, this happens off the floor or in a decanting station. But this is a really important part of being in the industry and being a professional is spitting. I mean, you taste a lot. You taste a lot of wines. If you're the only you taste every single bottle that you open. I can't put a number on it because I don't know. I don't remember the average bottle number, but the average price, I think we sold $17,000 worth of wine a night. You got to taste all of these extraordinary and wonderful wines, and that was kind of the perk and the education of the job. We've opened the bottle. What do you do now? How do you preserve it? If you don't drink the whole bottle, does it all go to hell? That's been the question in the wine industry for a very, very long time. There's different types of things that people use. We have rubber stoppers that you put into the bottle and you suck the air out, and not one of them has worked as well as what I'm going to talk about next. This is a Corvin, and this is a wine preserver. It allows you to access the wine in the bottle without removing the cork. Brilliant thing. I'm a tech head, I'm a tech guy, and the idea of like mixing tech with wine, I'm here for it. Because oxygen is the enemy. So this is really what we're combating here. Once you open this bottle of wine, we let oxygen inside of this bottle, it starts to attack a wine and starts to break it down. And once that's it, it's done. So it starts to decay. But this is one way to be able to not even open the bottle, allow minimum oxygen to the bottle, if any, and to be able to sample the wine over the course of years. This is a hollow needle. This punctures the cork. The wine is drawn through the needle and poured through the spout, leaving a heavy layer of gas on top of the wine, so it's not exposed to oxygen, therefore not deteriorating the wine. All the gases are odorless, flavorless. The key element here is that they're a heavier gas than oxygen, and so they'll lay on top of the wine, giving it a layer of protection. So we just clamp on here, so we're in, and now we just hold here firmly, and then we take and push down and insert the needle. The needle was in. It's just that simple. So here we want to just turn up here, press the lever of the gas, and wine comes out. Pull out. So a natural cork will just naturally reseal itself. So the idea that we put a hole in it doesn't leave a hole permanently. It will start to reseal itself and be a tight seal. I think for me, this was the biggest game changer. I don't use it enough as I'd like to, and maybe that's because I'm greedy. Like I open the bottle, we just drink it all, right? That's kind of always my thought. But the fact that like something like this exists and that there was some real thought and care that went into it. There's different size needles that you can get depending on what wine you're accessing. If it's an old bottle of wine, you can get a needle that's actually smaller in size, so it doesn't allow any sediment to come through. It's just really brilliant in a way that, I really haven't seen, and it's a real cool game changer. As a professional, I love these tools. I love to talk about them. I wanted to be able to share them with you today. They're fun when you're really into wine and those kind of things, but ultimately, just to get started, you just need a wine key and your favorite bottle of wine, and curiosity.
This is so New York, and there's people just walking by.